So this is our last day on George Berkeley, and today we're going to look at some of the limitations of his view and how he dealt with the things that he thought did exist, spirits and their ideas, and how he was led to come up with a different notion of representation besides ideas. In some way, we've been seeing how we get clearer and clearer about what an idea is as the empiricists went along. And we're also seeing that more and more things that used to be done by ideas are now done by other features of the mind. In Locke, they were done by associations that were carried out within the black box of our brain that we didn't understand, that somehow organized our ideas and memories into folders and labels, and somehow guided our thought and activities based upon those. In Berkeley, we'll see that there's another type of representation called a notion that allows us to know spirits and to know God. So let's remind ourselves of the aim of Berkeley's philosophy. Remember, he's interested in defending the truths of religion and showing that the difficulties of understanding religious mysteries are nothing compared to the difficulty of understanding the new mechanical philosophy that believes that all we perceive directly is our own mind, that outside of our mind is the cause of our ideas, are these immaterial objects that have just primary properties, and who don't possess any of the secondary qualities that endow them with beauty and pleasure and pain and any of the things that we enjoy. So consider this defense of realism that Berkeley gives in his dialogues. He says, "Look, are not the fields covered with a delightful verdure," which means just greenness and fertility. "Is there not something in the woods and groves, in the rivers and clear springs, that soothes, that delights, that transports the soul? At the prospect of the wide and deep ocean, or some huge mountain whose top is lost in clouds, or of an old gloomy forest, are not our minds filled with a pleasing horror?" And he'll go on for a full paragraph describing all of the beauties of secondary qualities, all of the beauties of the ideas that present themselves to our minds. So if you skip to the end, is not the whole system immense, beautiful, and glorious beyond expression and beyond thought? What treatment, then, do those philosophers deserve who would deprive these noble and delightful scenes of all reality? How should those principles be entertained that lead us to think that all the visible beauty of the creation is merely a false and imaginary glare? So Berkeley alone, among all the philosophers we're going to look at, is really defending the reality of secondary qualities. All the things that we love, all the things that we enjoy are the touches, tastes, feels, colors, and sensations that would have been called secondary qualities that didn't really exist in reality. And remember that mechanistic reductionism viewed reality as a bunch of meaningless particles, a little empty, qualitatively identical bits of data, with their only properties being their formal relationships. So one of the problems of modern philosophy was to find a home for human spirit in the world described by science. And Berkeley, like Leibniz, is going to deny the reality of that scientific worldview and say that the world is indeed populated by spirits, and that all of the things that we perceive in the world, all the things that we love and desire about the world, are in fact real. They're real ideas in our mind that owe their reality to God, who's projecting them into our mind. So Berkeley is going to argue that his view is much more realistic than Descartes' or Locke's, because he is going to defend the reality not just of dead and lifeless matter, but the reality of all of the beautiful secondary qualities, sensations, and feelings that we get from the material world. So let's remind ourselves of that famous argument against material substance, Berkeley's canonical argument, or his most important argument. That was really an argument about how ideas work, or how we represent reality. Remember, it said that an idea represents through similarity. It has to be a good picture. And it held that ideas are passive and unextended things, and they can't represent material reality, which is an extended material substance. So because an idea can't be similar to, can't be a good picture of material objects, there can't possibly be an idea of any material substance, because nothing can be like an idea but another idea. It's going to turn out that because ideas are passive and spirits are active, if we apply that principle that nothing can be like an idea but another idea, not only can we not form an idea of material objects outside of us, it's also going to be the case that we can't form an idea of any spirit. For Berkeley, all that exists are spirits and ideas. And it's going to turn out that the only thing that we can form ideas of are other ideas, because nothing can be like an idea but an idea. An idea is an unextended passive entity. And we'll see that ideas, Berkeley says, are passive. They have no agency whatsoever, unlike Locke, who thought that we had simple ideas of reflection, of power, and of volition. We'll see that this is going to influence David Hume, who we'll study next, in an important way, when he's going to argue that reason is incapable of making any judgments about morality because they have no active power or force. They can't make you feel or do anything. They're just passive, inert pictures. So since ideas are passive, but spirits are simple, undivided, active beings, as you see Berkeley saying, there's no way that an idea can be a likeness or a picture of a spirit. We know spirits, he says, only by their effects. This is going to be very influential upon Immanuel Kant, who's going to try to form a theory of what we are on the inside, what our transcendental ego or self is, by looking at the effects of our action. This new mode of argument is called a transcendental argument, that tries to get at something beyond experience that we can't form an idea of by seeing the effects that it produces within our experience. And Kant would say that he got this idea from Berkeley, who thought that we don't form ideas of spirits, we know of them only through their effects in our ideas. They're the active things, that unextended things that produce our ideas. Remember, Berkeley thought there were two kinds of productions of ideas. Those that came from us. So when we produce ideas that are subject to our will, we gain some type of notion of spirit. And when things come to us against our will, we get some type of notion of God. So he's going to say that while we don't have an idea of spirit or of God, we do have some notion of soul or spirit. So he comes up with this new word to describe a different type of mental representation that isn't an idea, which can only be like an other idea, which is a picture, but which is another type of conception or understanding. And here we get a rejection of that mind's eye model that says our knowledge is always the mind's perception of ideas that are inside of our mind. And we'll see this will be very influential of Immanuel Kant, and indeed all of the 20th century tradition of continental philosophy, who's going to follow Descartes in talking about horizons of experience, ideas that are too big to fit into our little minds, like Descartes' idea of an infinite being or God. So Berkeley, by following strict empirical principles, is led to come to the belief that there are certain types of understandings that we have that go beyond our ideas, that aren't strictly empirical in the obvious sense that Locke would say, that nothing can be in the mind except what is first in the senses, because our notions are knowledge of spirits, which we can't form an idea of, but which we know through their effects. So knowledge of spirits isn't immediate, but we can know God from the fact that we have these ideas produced in us against our will, and he's going to think that this pure and clear light, which enlightens everyone, is itself invisible. So this would have been a common Protestant idea, that human reason is incapable of knowing God, yet we feel are enlightened by, illuminated by grace, which is an indirect apprehension of the existence of God through his effects. So we can draw a parallel to the argument against material substance. We've already stated it, but it's worthwhile drawing out explicitly. An idea represents through similarity by being a picture, but an idea can't be a picture of a spirit. Spirit is a passive and unextended thing. Ideas are passive and unextended, whereas spirits are active things. No passive thing can ever be a good picture of an active thing. It's like saying, can you take a picture of a moving thing with a still picture? So since spirits are active, ideas are passive, ideas can never be a good picture or be about spirits. So an idea cannot represent a spirit. Therefore, it's impossible to form an idea of a spirit, according to Berkeley. So let's do some summary, and we'll compare Berkeley to Locke. Later, we can add the comparison to Hume, which is in this table. Berkeley's arguments are very simple. We can see them in three basic stages. Remember, Berkeley thought that abstract ideas were impossible, whereas Locke thinks abstract ideas are possible. Berkeley's going to think they're impossible. He's going to agree with Berkeley that there are no innate ideas. Even our notions, which we get, come to us after we get sense experiences, and we infer them on the basis of those effects that they have within our ideas. So once Berkeley saw that all our ideas are concrete and specific, you can't separate out the different parts of them. Remember, he argued that secondary qualities are obviously in the mind, and you can't separate out pain and pleasure and color and feel from the primary properties of length and duration and number, so that primary properties were also in the mind. And then finally, he attacked Locke's idea of a substance, an immaterial substance, saying that the whole idea doesn't make sense because no idea can be about anything but another idea. An idea has to be similar to its object, but nothing is like an idea but another idea. So there's no way that unextended idea can ever picture an extended material substance. So you can see that Locke and Berkeley disagree about the idea of substance. Berkeley says we have no idea of substance and hence they can't exist, whereas Locke thought we have a complex and very vague idea of a something I know not what, which is the source of the stick-togetherness of our simple sensations. Remember, Locke also thought we formed an abstract idea of our identity based upon the continuity of our memory, whereas Berkeley is going to think our self is a spirit, and we have no idea of the active spirit which produces our sensations. We can form only a notion. In the same way, Locke had thought that we could form a general abstract idea of the substance that lay behind the progression of causes in the entire universe. Again, a very vague, something I know not what idea of the substance of the universe. And Berkeley's going to say that we can't form an idea of God either. God is the active power that gives rise to the ideas that arise in our mind against our will and of the reality of the world outside of our mind. But we can form no idea of God because he's an active spirit and we have only passive ideas. So we can form, again, only a notion from the effects that this spirit has on our ideas. So here's a good exercise. We can compare how Locke and Berkeley would differ on examples of different things that I might ask you about. So the sensation of red we saw for Locke is a simple idea of sensation, whereas for Berkeley, he's going to think it's an idea, and all ideas are concrete and specific and contain not simple ideas, but ideas of objects with all of their various different qualities combined, just as we perceive them. So triangularity would be an abstract idea, for Locke, a bare, naked appearance, remember, precise, naked appearance. Whereas Berkeley is going to think that there are no abstract ideas. So when we think of triangularity, we're having a particular concrete idea, maybe a right triangle or an acute triangle, that stands indifferently from many other ideas. A particular chair for Locke would be a complex idea of a particular substance that we get only from combining all of the simple ideas of sensation. Whereas a chair for Berkeley is going to be an idea in the mind. It's going to be the best example of an idea, a concrete, specific idea, and you can't separate out from that chair its length or size, its primary properties, or its secondary properties, its color or warmth or texture, nor from the pain or the pleasure that we get from it. Locke again is going to think that our personal identity is a complex idea based upon the continuity of our memories, a complex idea of the substance that stands behind the continuity of our memories. Whereas Berkeley thinks we don't have an idea of our identity or of our soul, only a notion, an active and immediate perception. So Locke is going to think our belief in causality, our belief in science, is a rational inference based upon our abstract idea of substance and of power. Whereas Berkeley is going to think that it's a rational inference that's based upon not any idea, but on the notion that we have of God's active power. Likewise, our belief in God is going to be a complex idea of the substance behind the world for Locke, whereas for Berkeley, it's merely a notion that is our awareness of God that goes beyond our ideas, that comes from this illumination which is itself invisible and arises from our apprehension of God's effect on the ideas that arise within us. So those are some examples of the types of questions I might ask you in comparing Locke and Berkeley, and we'll add Hume to our discussion starting next week.